Years ago, I worked as a delivery driver for a forlorn pizza shop in a forgotten town that was covered in darkness. Even though the night was always ominous, this particular one felt like a terrifying nightmare. Working there for almost a year, Jake, my silent coworker, and I alternated shifts. We frequently traveled by ourselves, alone, through the late hours till 2 in the morning. The night felt dense, like if a thick fog had descended upon everything. As I got back from a delivery, rain started tapping on the windows. Jake was making a pizza when I picked up the phone. A huge sausage pizza was ordered by a drunken voice on the other end. I accepted the order and inquired if there was anything else, despite an odd sensation running down my spine. Initial stillness was followed by repeated requests for the pizza exclusively. I sent the order and got ready for the next delivery. Jake's eyes locked onto mine as I reached for the pizza, giving me a look that spoke volumes. He kept his mouth shut, but his uneasiness was obvious. I dismissed it, telling myself it was just nervousness. The next delivery address was for a rural location that required a good 15-minute trip. I reached a house that was surrounded by trees and hardly discernible in the darkness. As I got close to the door, it quietly swung open. The man in front of me appeared confused, and as though I had caught him off guard. When I handed him the pizza and asked him to pay, there was a strange quiet. His unsteady hold on the pizza was unnerving, and he was looking over my shoulder. When I turned to look, a barely discernible man in a cloak was standing there in the fog. As I turned to face the man once more, his door suddenly slammed shut. I raced to my car and sped back to the shop as panic set in. Jake looked unaffected when I told him about the incident and encouraged me to make the following delivery. I felt uneasy and was compelled to phone the police just in case. They offered little comfort when they said they would look into it. The man claimed to be waiting for his friend Jake, who was still at work, when they contacted him back. But he asserted that he was unaware of the hooded individual. While Jake's evasive comments added to the mystery, I eventually became certain that he was in danger. The mystery persisted, following me to a different pizza place. The truth escaped me, though, even with time. I'm still gripped by the recollection of that night. It's a perplexing enigma that won't go away. I'm left with the unsettling thought that the shrouded figure's motives might never be known. I was hustling for extra money on a frigid Sunday night by delivering meals through DoorDash and Uber Eats. My friend had told me how to run both apps simultaneously, which was a creative method to increase my hourly wage. There was just one drawback: the seldom downtime spent driving around in search of a job. Running both apps solved that issue and made sure I was constantly making money. As the evening wore on, I scurried between residences and restaurants, completing orders on schedule. When I was about to assume that the evening would be regular, I managed to secure a little order from a nearby eatery. The delivery address was kilometers away, which was the catch. Those jobs were difficult, requiring long commutes for meager pay. The order, however, suggested a sizable tip. I grabbed it because temptation overcame me. I took the food and started the 25-minute journey to the customer. My phone buzzed with an incoming call halfway there as I was driving along a dark side road, most likely from a client. A man acknowledged that he was my client and apologized, saying that while using a friend's account to place the transaction, he neglected to update the address. He led me to his house, which he claimed was just around the block. He promised to wait outside to get the food. I didn't need the address, he said. He would be waiting. Sounded legitimate, and besides, I don't tend to get easily scared. I followed his instructions and arrived at the location that was supposed to be the friend's. I rolled up to a dead-end sign, indicating that the road was about to come to an end, on a gloomy road in a lonely neighborhood. Having faith that I had it right, I stopped to dial up the client and inform him of my arrival. But wham! A window knock jolted me out of my reverie. I rolled down the window and jumped out of the car to say hello to the guy. But when I turned to face him, a chilling sensation pierced my body. His expression was completely emotionless, like all expression had been washed away. "Something's off," screamed my gut, so I quickly pressed the window lock button. What do you know then? He thrust a rifle through the window and pointed it directly at my head. Following yells and further noises, a large group of them rushed over. They drew closer, yanking at the doorknobs and yelling at one another. My reflex kicked in and I slammed the gas pedal, zooming down the street since my head couldn't even keep up. I barely gave the gunman's pullback before I ran away. I quickly turned around and faced the opposite side as I approached the end of the road. But get this, the attackers vanished if they had never been there. Poof. My mouth fell as I realized that they had vanished. I immediately contacted 911 after leaving that confusing area because I was very shaken. Although there was talk of gang activity in this area, I sincerely doubted that I would become a victim. The police arrived swiftly and got to work. But where were the attackers? Vanished, and the hints were useless. I used food delivery services to reduce my exposure to the outside world during the COVID outbreak. The peculiar behavior of one of the frequent delivery men, Mark, stood out and developed into something very unnerving. Mark had the unusual ability to appear exactly as I was about to place an order, as if he could foresee my requirements. His eyes lacked sincerity, and his grin was forced. I initially thought it was just a coincidence, but as time went on, I started to get uneasy whenever he spoke. The weeks went by, and Mark's appearance started to alter. He had lost his once shaven face, and his eyes had grown bloodshot, giving him a ferocious appearance. With each delivery, the bags under his eyes appeared to get worse. He started to make people feel frightened, as if something was wrong with his very aura. One evening after giving me the groceries, I saw Mark lingering by the gate to my yard. He had his eyes locked on my front door and was grinning oddly. My skin prickled with goosebumps, and my gut constricted. The moment I swiftly shut the door, I was struck by the memory of his disturbing smile. I got a notification from the delivery app one late night. Despite the fact that I hadn't made an order, it was a communication from Mark. "I'm aware you're at home," he wrote. "Unlock the door." I was startled to see him standing in the shadows next to my front porch with his eyes fixed on my home as I peered out the window. His once smile had transformed into a sinister smirk, which made me shudder in fear. My voice quivered as I conveyed the scenario to the police over the phone as soon as possible. When they got there, Mark had vanished once more with no sign of him. Although the officers promised me that they would look out for him, I couldn't help but feel as though he was constantly watching. Weeks passed, and I was unable to get rid of the feeling that I was being continually watched. Strange marks started appearing on my glass, almost like someone had been looking in. The sound of faint whispers repeatedly woke me up as my sleep became erratic, and they seemed to disappear as soon as I opened my eyes. I made the decision to contact Mark's employer at the grocery shop as my need for information grew. When I asked about him, they told me that Mark had quit his work for personal reasons weeks before. Knowing that the guy who had been bringing goods to my door was no longer an employee, the realization made me feel even more uneasy. I once heard scratching outside my bedroom window and woke up. As I cautiously turned to gaze, my chest hammered with excitement. Mark was pressing his twisted face against the glass there in the moonlight, a sly grin arching over his lips. I yelled as I jumped out of bed and hurriedly dialed 911. When the police quickly came, they quickly searched the area for any sign of Mark, but he had already disappeared. Although they promised me that my neighborhood would receive more patrols, I knew in my heart that this horror was far from finished. Mark's insane smile and creepy presence have been permanently seared in my consciousness, and I still live in constant fear of running into him again. My sense of security in my own home has been destroyed, and in its place is a harrowing worry that he might attack at any time.